Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, that's right, I recognize that opening. It is time for Clash of the Classics. I'm Donnie, I'm your guide here on Horsepower for an Hour. Tom Spence, my partner in crime, he's our historian for these battles. And Ken Hale is our classic car specialist. Our newest addition is Mr. Glenn Eldridge. He's our new team member and he's our commentator. He's an automotive columnist for the Auto Addicts magazine and he serves on the Ford Car Council Board of Directors. It's certainly great to have him on the team. Now, if you're new to our show, perhaps you've just discovered us, we welcome everyone. You're going to find every week we roll the clock back. We pit two classic models against one another. We look at styling. We go head-to-head with powertrain. We check out design features. Then we vote on the car that we like best. And as always, we welcome you to chime in, to join in, and let us know which car that you prefer. These battles are fueled continually by National Parts Depot for the finest in classic car restoration. Got to check them out at npdlink.com. Today's going to be some fun. It's all about the 1964 Chevy 2 SS battling that 1964 Falcon Sprint. All right, let's talk about that 1964 Chevy 2 SS. First-gen Novas are either loved or hated by most Chevy enthusiasts. Early 62s and 63s were available with either a four-cylinder or a six-cylinder engine, and I guess those were kind of lackluster to say the least, but there are some reports of dealer-installed V8s, but they're the stuff of myth, Ken. I guess there's no official documentation supporting a V8 engine in 62 or 63. 64 was the first year for the V8. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when they brought out the Chevy 2 in 1962, the whole idea of it was to pick up sales because the Corvair was losing sales to the Falcon. So they needed another small car to bring into it. And it's as a unitized car with a bolt-on front end on it, so it's semi-unitized. But they originally introduced with six cylinders. You could get them with the sedan. You could get them with what they call the Sport Coupe, which was the two-door hardtops that we like. And they actually did not get a V8 in that car until 1964. I think the SS came out in 63. And in the 64, they had the V8.
Was it the Z03, I think they called it? That was the RPO designation, Z03 on that one? Is that
correct? The RPO
correct?
designation, I recall seeing it, but I don't remember what the number was.
It's a Z03, but the four-speed manual and the two-speed power glide were the transmission options. But even then, it seems like sales took a beating because the introduction of that all-new Chevelle, right?
Well, and that's the thing. The Chevelle started to eat into the profits, and it kept eating into the sales. And ultimately, they changed it. The 65 was the last year of that basic body of the Chevy 2. Then they went to the next gen. And then the Novas became kind of their own race car. But, the following year, in 1965, you could get a 327, a 300 horsepower in that car, and when you got that, you got a car that would go out there and compete with the GTOs.
I like that GTO, but when it comes to Novas, for me, 68 and 69 probably my favorite models. But we do see quite a few first and second gens out at the Southern California car shows that we do. Glenn, you are our newest addition on this 64 Chevy 2 Nova. What do you think of this car? Do you like this car?
I actually do, and I'm going to come from two different angles. One of them is for just a classic car, something that I like sitting in, and the other one is performance. Either way, they just look really cool. They have a certain flavor to it. Not the most comfortable car to drive in, of course, because we're used to today's modern world. But the look and the styling, I think it fits in.
Original MSRP on this car, Ken, was about $2,206. What would a good number 2 car be valued at today?
A really good number 2 SS would be about $30,000.
$30K. So that's a little less than I thought it would have been. I mean, what do you think, Ben?
That's not bad. People were making $6,000 back then, by the way, about $6,000 a year. So probably a decently priced car. When back then you also spread it across maybe 2 to 3 years on payments, not up to the scale that we have now.
To get off point just a bit, 64 was, when did the Vietnam conflict begin? Because 65 was the height of the conflict, right? Was it in 65, 66? When did it begin?
Definitely would have been heating up then. It was such a weird time for the country. Talk about music and the separation, the generation gap. The Beatles, which She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. Louis Armstrong behind the Beatles. Dean Martin was also in the top 5. Dean Martin had a top 5 song next to the Beatles, Roy Orbison, and the Beach Boys. So when you look at what was going on between what your parents would like and what you would like. It was all really merging in a very strange time for us back in '64.
Pretty interesting stuff. But before we go any further, I want to say whether you're looking for simple replacement parts, you need restoration panels, performance upgrades, quality reproduction panels, whatever you need, NPD are the go-to guys. You check their catalog for part availability. National Parts Depot makes our Clash of the Classics possible, and no one knows classics better than NPD. All right, I want to head over now, Mr. Ken, over to the 1964 Falcon Sprint. And prior to us researching this particular car, I wasn't familiar with the Sprint designation. I've always liked the look of the Falcon, and in '64 it seemed like it was performing pretty well in terms of sales. That V8 260 is definitely a proven performer, and the Ford 2-speed automatic or the 4-speed manual transmissions were both, for the time, doing okay. The 2-speed automatic probably was more problematic than most people care to remember, but that Ford-O-Matic cast iron unit ultimately replaced that transmission, and then the little C4 turned out to be one of the best Ford units ever had. But let's talk a little bit about that Falcon Sprint. What makes a Sprint a Sprint?
Well, primarily what it is, it's a stiffer suspension. It has a louder exhaust system. It has all the things that would kind of make it a more of a performance car, certain badging on the car. You could get it with bucket seats, floor-mounted shifts. So that made the Sprint. That's separated from, and it was actually a Falcon Futura Sprint. But that's separated from the basic Falcons. And the Falcon, that particular Falcon was a second gen. I think you might have mentioned that. And basically a really good car. It had that little 6-cylinder motor in it. It was at the time a 4-main motor. And then they went to the 260 V8. And I don't know if people realize, but that engine is called a Windsor engine. And that 260 V8 really had its roots back at 221-inch V8 back in 1962. And that's the same engine ultimately morphed into the 302 that we saw later in life. But it's called a Windsor engine, but not to be confused
With the 351.
with the 351, the California, what they call the Ford 335. The 64, it was a really nice performing car. The last year for that body was 1965. And at that time, there's significant changes in the car, and one of them was, as you say, the Ford-O-Matic instead of 2-speed. And I'd like to ask you more about that 2-speed because I'm not really familiar with that transmission. And the other one is that 6-cylinder, all of a sudden has 7 main bearings. That's a hell of a motor.
Yeah, because it had so much support at the bottom, that thing went forever, it seemed like.
A lot of guys are building them today.
Well, this overall design and style, Spence, of the car, classy, reasonably, like Ken said, very dependable, or at least reasonably dependable. Interior, well laid out, sensible. I like the car. I kind of like the way the corners are designed up at the front. They got away from the rounded sort of look to more of a squared look. This is a darn good-looking car.
And it's a tough fight between the two models. It's really difficult. They both have classic looks. And this is the Wonder Years car for me. This is right in that part where you're a little kid and you're driving around in these. So I like both a lot.
Original MSRP on this car, on the Sprint, a little bit less than the Nova, coming in at $1,996. Now, what is a good number 2 Falcon worth?
Probably in the area of 18,000.
Whoa! Now, see, and that's curious. It would seem to me like that would be every bit as much as the Nova, if not even more.
Yeah, you would think so, but I for some reason or another, actually the sales on that really took a nosedive because it was competing head-on with their Mustang at the time. And for very little more money, people could have a Mustang. So the Sprint really never caught hold and became a really popular car. And to this day, it's not a popular car.
We got about 1 minute left. Mr. Glenn, start with you. Who do you like and why?
Oh, man, it's going to be the Chevy Nova. I'm a Ford guy.
Wow, I am surprised that you're
I knew you were going to say that.
Heck yeah. You're the blue oval guy.
Only because I'm a performance guy.
Okay.
I'd be slapping a 350 in there in no time.
All right, Mr. Ken, where are you going?
I go with the Chevy.
Okay, so we got 2 Chevys.
$12,000 changed my mind to the Chevy.
We have 4 Chevrolets. That means we're going to need someone out there to break this tie up because it's unanimous here today in studio. All of us like the Chevy. That's not to say I didn't care for the Falcon. It is a nice car, but that Nova, if I had the keys to both, I'm driving home in the Nova. Let us know. Go to our website or our Facebook page. Let us know which car you like. And once again, if you got a classic ride, you're in the middle of a classic build, or just considering getting a classic car restoration, do yourself a favor. Visit NPD anytime. 24 hours a day. NPDlink.com, that's National Parts Depot. Stick around, we got a bunch more coming up. We are your ultimate stop in automotive radio. We are Horsepower for an Hour.